Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 1 Kings, the 20th chapter. And, as we go through this chapter, right, we're going to deal with, the situation here where, as mentioned before, right, we start to see the Syrians starting to get more into it with Israel, in terms of the adversarial relationship here. And so let's get into it. This is 1 Kings chapter 20, verse 1. And Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, gathered all his host together, and there were 32 kings with him, and horses and chariots. And he went up and besieged Samaria and warred against it. Now, when we take a look here at, let's say 1 Kings 20 map. Sometimes this is a good way to, there we go. All right, so let's zoom in on this a bit. Take a look here. So regardless of the actual mappings, the routes here, what I wanted to show is you have Syria, which is up here at this point in time that we're reading in 1 Kings. It's right around here geographically, right? And you have Israel right around here, Samaria right around here. So looking at this map from this direction, this like bird's eye view, you would think that, well, Syria is north, right? Syria is north of Israel here. So why does it mention the Syrians going up and besieging Samaria? Okay, and the reason is, when you look at this map, which they've done a pretty good job of it as well, you start to see that they show you, for example, you see this looks all rocky, here looks all rocky. So on maps, this is how they depict like mountains or hills on a map. And then you see some areas that are plain, and then a bit more rocky mountains, and then some areas that are plain. So when you look all through here from around Samaria down towards Jerusalem, there's a reason why it was referred to as the hill country, because in terms of like altitude, right, it's high. It's higher than the level ground. So literally, to get to Jerusalem, you have to go up, right? And same thing here, right? If you look at it geographically, like from Syria to Samaria, you're going south, but you're going up because Samaria was up as well, like on a, it wasn't on a level plain as somewhere like the coastal area over here leading down to like Gaza and so on. So that's why it mentions here that he went up and besieged Samaria. So at this point, you have the Syrians, they've laid siege to Samaria, right? And meaning that we know how a siege works, right? They cut you off, right? They block you in, and you can't get anything coming in or going out. And it's pretty much like a game of endurance and patience, because the side that is able to endure typically is the side that is laying siege or besieging the other side, because they have ability to get more resources. The side that is being besieged, they're sort of stuck in there with what they have. So they come and they lay siege to Samaria. It's kind of like holding Samaria hostage at this point. And he sent messengers to Ahab, king of Israel, into the city, and said unto him, Thus saith Ben-Hadad. So you can imagine these messengers, they're obviously gonna come unarmed, right? Or give the appearance of that, because then they're gonna be taken out. Typically when you have a siege, the fortress or the area that's being sieged, they have people that are on the walls that are watching. They probably have like arrows and so on. So if somebody approaches the gates or the city or the door, they gotta like see what's up. So you can imagine these messengers either come with some flag or some symbol to say like, hey, we're messengers, like we have a message. So anyway, they let them in, and this is the message that they had. Thus saith Benhadad, thy silver and thy gold is mine, thy wives also and thy children, even the goodliest, are mine. And the king of Israel answered and said, my lord, O king, according to thy saying, I am thine and all that I have. Now, what it means here is not necessarily that, well, let me actually read the 5th verse and then get into it. So Ahab submits himself to Benhadad. Verse 5, and the messengers came again and said, thus speaketh Benhadad, saying, although I have sent unto thee, saying, thou shalt deliver me thy silver and thy gold, and thy wives and thy children. So let's pause here for a second. It uses the word wives here, right? But when you actually go into the Hebrew, I mean, here I think they have the word here for, let's see, they have asha, but the word here meaning woman, okay, right? So you have woman, which can be a wife, female, a woman, wife, female, right? So when he says your wives, he's not talking about the married women per se, right? Because Ahab is not, you know, as we read through, he didn't say, remember, he was married to Jezebel, right? He didn't say, okay, go ahead and have Jezebel. The wives here representing the women, okay? The women of your nation, okay? The best of them. And the children, the best of them. That would be servants. So similar to when we fast forward like to the time of Daniel, when the Babylonians came, they took the youth, the ones of the nobility, right? Daniel, the 3 holy children, okay? So it's not like they came in there and said, hey, give me your actual son and daughter, though they could have, right? But it's not like typically they would go and say, give me your son and daughter and give me the wife that you're married to, okay? What he means here is the women, okay, of your nation here, the fine, good ones, because women, children, similar to gold and land and crops and resources, were considered spoil, okay? So to sum it up, in other words, he is asking for the spoils. Anyway, verse 6, yet I will send my servants unto thee tomorrow about this time. So Benhadad sent his servants the first time, said, hey, you see the position you're in, so what's it going to be? You going to submit and be subject to me and give me the best of what I asked for, or what? Ahab says, okay, fine. Then he sends messengers again to say, yeah, I know I came earlier and I asked you to give me the stuff, silver, gold, women, children, good, yes. But now I want some more, okay? So tomorrow, about this time, as we're reading in verse 6, I'm going to send some servants, right? And they shall search thine house and the houses of thy servants. And it shall be that whatsoever is pleasant in thine eyes, they shall put it in their hand and take it away. So we're pretty much going to come and take your stuff. Now, why does it say in thine eyes? Well, in thine eyes meaning the precious things that you have, right? So if they come into they come up into your crib, obviously if you have, you know, gold and silver in there, that's going to be pleasant in your eyes as well. They're going to take that, you know. So long story short, the things that are good, that they perceive to be good, they're going to take it with them. Then the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, mark, I pray you, and see how this man seeketh mischief. For he sent unto me for my wives and for my children, and for my silver, and for my gold, and I denied him not. And all the elders and all the people said unto him, hearken not unto him, nor consent. Wherefore he said unto the messengers of Benhadad, tell my lord the king all that thou didst send for thy servant at the first I will do, but this thing I may not do. So the request for the women, the children, the gold, the silver, yeah, I can do that. But for you to send your servants in here and just take out all our stuff, I can't do that. And the messengers departed and brought him word again. And Benhadad sent unto him and said, the gods do so unto me, and more also, if the dust of Samaria shall suffice for handfuls for all the people that follow me. Okay, so this is in other words a threat to say that we're gonna destroy Samaria. We're gonna break it down and completely demolish that. And the king of Israel answered and said, tell him, let not him that girdeth on his harness boast himself as him that putteth it off. Okay, and looking at this saying here in another translation, which would make it a bit clearer, is like the NLT. The king of Israel sent back this answer, a warrior putting on his sword for battle should not boast like a warrior who has already won. Okay, yeah, and meaning, rightfully so, meaning, well, when you gird on your harness, you're getting ready for war. When you take it off, this is after the war, right? And so that's sort of the saying here. You're speaking as though you've already won. And it came to pass when Benhadad heard this message, as he was drinking, he and the kings in his pavilion, or in the pavilions, that he said unto his servants, set yourselves in array. And they set themselves in array against the city. So remember, at this point, there is a siege going on. So Benhadad, the other kings that were with him, his armies, they've surrounded, Samaria. And of course, typically you would see like they would have their tents set up, and that's why they mentioned here the pavilions over here. As you see in detail what they have for that. So he's in there with the other kings drinking and so on. They send him message again, and he's like, oh, all right, it's time to get to work. Right, so a booth, a covert, a temporary shelter. So he tells them, all right, prepare, set yourselves in array against the city. We're pretty much gonna go do what we gotta do and take it down. Verse 13, and behold, there came a prophet unto Ahab, king of Israel, saying, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, hast thou seen all this great multitude? Behold, I will deliver it into thine hand this day, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord Yahweh. And Ahab said, by whom? And he said, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, even by the young men of the princes of the provinces. Then he said, who shall order the battle? And he answered, thou. So you're going to lead this battle, and by the hands of your princes, your captains, and so on, you're going to win this. And he numbered the young men of the princes of the provinces, and they were 232. And after them he numbered all the people, even all the children of Israel, being 7,000. And they went out at noon, but Benhadad was drinking himself drunk in the pavilions, he and the kings, the 32 kings that helped him. And the young men of the princes of the provinces went out first. Because remember, once again, it's a siege. Let me see if I can get an image here. Good image. Siege. See if we can get a visual. Not nation besieging another. Maybe this is. It's hard to describe. All right, maybe we might be able to use something like this. Okay, so this isn't the clearest, but it gets the job done. So the point is, you can see, for example, this wall right here, right? This like fortress-ish, and then you have the people out here, and so this is like a rampant, right? You can see they build something like this to scale the walls. So they have the ladders here as well. So then they move this thing, and you can also see like the tents here, the pavilions, and so on. So they move this thing, push it against the wall, then they drop the or close enough to the wall, and then they drop that walking thing there, and then they scale it and they start invading and stuff like that. But as we're reading, so Samaria and the inhabitants are inside. The Syrians are outside. And so at this point, it says the young men came out first, right? So you can imagine them coming out, and the armies are like, okay, like what's going on here? They ready to surrender? They ready to, what's up? So that's where we're at. It says, and the young men of the princes of the provinces went out first. And Ben-Hadad sent out, and they told him, saying, there are men come out of Samaria. And he said, whether they be come for peace, take them alive, or whether they be come for war, take them alive. So if they're coming out to fight or not, capture them. So these young men of the princes of the province came out of the city, and the army which followed them. So at this point, you can imagine the young men are leading the charge. You got the rest of the army of Israel pulling up behind them. And they slew everyone his man, and the Syrians fled. So they came out, charged straight up, and just started slaying, to the point where they started taking out so many of these Syrians that the Syrians ended up running away and retreating. And Israel pursued them, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, escaped on a horse with the horsemen. And the king of Israel went out and smote the horses and the chariots, and slew the Syrians with a great slaughter. And the prophet came to the king of Israel, and said unto him, go, strengthen thyself, and mark, and see what thou doest. For at the return of the year, the king of Syria will come up against thee. So this isn't over just yet. Okay, they're going to come back. You know, they've retreated now, but they're going to come back. So pretty much go and get ready. Go prepare yourself. All right, NLT says, afterward the prophet said to King Ahab, get ready for another attack. Begin making plans now for the king of Aram, another word for saying, or another way of saying Syria, will come back next spring, right at the return of the year, so the next year. Now, verse 23, and the servants of the king of Syria said unto him, their gods are gods of the hills, therefore they were stronger than we. But let us fight against them in the plain, and surely we shall be stronger than they. And so they're basically saying, well, it's a hill country, right? Their gods are probably the gods of the hills, so they have the advantage. But if we set up this next battle to not be in the hills, then we might have the advantage. And do this thing. So in addition, take the kings away, every man out of his place, and put captains in their rooms. So replace those 32 kings and put captains instead, right? People who are experienced in war to lead those armies. And number thee an army like the army that thou hast lost, horse for horse and chariot for chariot, and we will fight against them in the plain, and surely we shall be stronger than they. And he hearkened unto their voice and did so. So pretty much, replace the armies and the resources we lost, and let's get ready and go against them. And it came to pass at the return of the year, so the next year, that Ben-Hadad numbered the Syrians and went up to Aphek to fight against Israel. So now, I think that previous image will come in a bit more handy. Yeah, this one here. So you can see, so this was Samaria, where they first attempted to besiege Israel. They did, and they ended up fleeing. And this is Aphek over here. Okay, so yeah, it looks a little mountainy here, but it's in reality, it was probably more of a plains area at that time. So this is just an approximation of where Aphek would be. Anyway, they go there, they set up, right, to fight against Israel. Verse 27, and the children of Israel were numbered and were all present. Remember, it's a war, right? So they come with their army, you come with your army, and then the battle is set in array, meaning, you have both sides against each other. It says, and went against them, and the children of Israel pitched before them like two little flocks of kids being goats. But the Syrians filled the country. So in comparison, in terms of even the multitude of Israel's army versus the Syrians, it was like two small flocks of goats compared to like this whole army that's just completely filled up the whole land. And there came a man of God and spake unto the king of Israel, and said, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because the Syrians have said, The Lord Yahweh is God of the hills, but he is not God of the valleys. Therefore will I deliver all this great multitude into thine hand, and ye shall know that I am the Lord Yahweh. So these guys out here, they think, man, basically the Lord said, I'm going to show them something. And they pitched one over against the other 7 days. So they were basically, in that array, right, that battle array, facing each other, right, for 7 days. The war hadn't like officially commenced, where one side charges at the other, and so on. So for 7 days they're basically there. And so it was that in the 7th day the battle was joined. So the battle begun, and the children of Israel slew of the Syrians 100,000 footmen in 1 day. But the rest fled to Aphek into the city, and there a wall fell upon 27,000 of the men that were there. So the Lord was really bringing it down on them, quite literally. And Ben-Hadad fled and came into the city, into an inner chamber. This is Aphek, that is. And his servants said unto him, Behold, now we have heard that the kings of the house of Israel are merciful kings. Because at this point they can see that they're not going to win this. Let us, I pray thee, put sackcloth on our loins and ropes on our heads, and go out to the king of Israel. Peradventure he will save thy life. All right, so he's basically saying, look, the servants are basically saying, look, our only option here is to pretty much surrender, right? Surrender, let's just surrender to them. And I heard that they're merciful, and, maybe they'll have mercy and save our lives, right? So they girded sackcloth on their loins, sackcloth being a symbol of like mourning, or in this case, like being brought down, brought low, right? So to symbolize here that they're like servants to now the king of Israel, and put ropes on their heads, and that would be similar as well in terms of meaning. And came to the king of Israel and said, Thy servant Ben-Hadad saith, I pray thee, let me live. And he said, Is he yet alive? He is my. So if he's alive, then fine, I'll make a league with him, right? He's my brother. He's cool. Verse 33. Now the men did diligently observe whether anything would come from him, and did hastily catch it. Basically, they were paying very close attention to see if Ahab was lying or trying to be deceptive here to lure out Ben-Hadad and then slay him. And they said, Thy brother Ben-Hadad, basically he's alive, so let's make that covenant. Then he said, right, Ahab replied, Go ye, bring him. Then Ben-Hadad came forth to him, and he caused him to come up into the chariot. Because remember, Ben-Hadad was hiding in the city. This was war, and Israel was winning. And Ben-Hadad said unto him, The cities which my father took from thy father I will restore. And thou, because remember, once again, the Syrians, this wasn't the first encounter with the Syrians in Israel, right? So they had come into Israel, they had subjected and taken certain parts to be theirs. So that's what he's saying here. He's going to restore those. And one example is going back to the conflict that I believe it was between Asa and Baasha, where Asa sought the help of the Syrians, and because Baasha was building up, I think it was Milo, right, to come against the southern kingdom, and so the Syrians ended up attacking some of the cities of the northern kingdom, and that caused Baasha to sort of stop doing that. So the Syrians had, this like it says, they had taken over some of the territory of Israel. It says, and thou shalt make streets for thee in Damascus, as my father made in Samaria. So similar to how the Syrians conquered certain parts in Israel and made it theirs, you could do the same in Samaria. And in fact, so that you look up the word streets here. So we have streets, chawat, right? Outward, street, outside. Highway, right? So that makes sense. Like a path, territory, some place where it's almost representing an ability to be able to have some jurisdiction through that territory. Anyway, then said Ahab, I will send thee away with this covenant. So he made a covenant with him and sent him away. And a certain man of the sons of the prophets said unto his neighbor, in the word of the Lord, smite me, I pray thee. Meaning, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him and told him to do that. So he asked his neighbor, basically, hit me, smite me. And the man refused to smite him. Wait, what? You crazy? No, I'm not going to hit you, man. What's wrong with you? Then said he unto him, because thou hast not obeyed the voice of the Lord Yahweh, behold, as soon as thou art departed from me, a lion shall slay thee. Here goes that disobedience. And as soon as he was departed from him, a lion found him and slew him. So he basically got taken out. Once again, it's one thing to read it on paper, but to visualize it in reality, it's kind of crazy. Then he found another man and said, smite me, I pray thee. And the man smote him, so that in smiting him, he wounded him. So he basically hit him, whether he punched him in the face or whatever the case is, maybe busted his lip or something, his eye, I don't know. So he wounded him. So the prophet departed and waited for the king by the way and disguised himself with ashes upon his face. So now you can imagine wherever it is, that they had that war in affect. So on the way back, right, there's typically like a main road that they would take. So the prophet goes over there, he disguised himself, put ashes on his face so you couldn't really tell who he was. Then he went and waited over there for Ahab to come to pass. And as the king passed by, he cried unto the king. And he said, thy servant went out into the midst of the battle. So that's why he asked the person to smite him. So it can make it more believable that he was also in the battlefield over there. And this is the point that he's trying to make here. Thy servant went out into the midst of the battle, and behold, a man turned aside, and brought a man unto me, and said, keep this man. If by any means he be missing, then shall thy life be for his life, or else thou shalt pay a talent of silver. Right? Now, let me pull this up in the NLT. So basically, as it says here, as the king passed by, the prophet called out to him, sir, I was in the thick of the battle, and suddenly a man brought me a prisoner. He said, guard this man. If for any reason he gets away, you will either die or pay a fine of 75 pounds of silver. And as thy servant was busy here and there, he was gone. So basically, I kind of lost the guy. I turned around, turned back, he's gone. And the king of Israel said unto him, so shall thy judgment be. Thyself has decided it. So that sounds like your problem. You're the one who didn't keep a good eye on this guy, and now he's gone. So, your carelessness, you have to sort of pay for that. And he hasted and took the ashes away from his face. So then he immediately started cleaning his face. And the king of Israel discerned him that he was of the prophets. Isn't this one of the... So you can sort of see why as we read forward, right, when we come up to the point of Jehoshaphat being the king of Judah, and he comes to visit Ahab, and then there comes a whole situation with I think it was Micah, the prophet, who Ahab did not like, and he said that was because he never has anything good to say about him. Well, you can imagine that there's also some previous, one example being this, situations which we're about to get into, where Ahab hasn't received the best news, right, or had the best encounters with these prophets. So anyway, he discerns this guy's one of the prophets, and he said unto him, right, the prophet said, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because thou hast let go out of thy hand a man whom I appointed to utter destruction. Therefore thy life shall go for his life, and thy people for his people. And the king of Israel went to his house heavy and displeased, and came to Samaria. So basically, what the prophet said in the first place was a metaphorical representation of Ahab's situation. And just as Ahab confirmed it, the Lord basically said, well, even you have acknowledged that this is the right, like this is the appropriate result of somebody who would be in this position. Well, you're the one in the position, and just like you let him go, he was supposed to be put to death, right? I appointed him to destruction, but you let him go. So now I'm going to take you in his stead, all right? And your people in the stead of his people. So that was basically a foreshadowing that some form of destruction or judgment would be coming upon Ahab and Samaria here at this point. All right, so that brings us to the end of the book of 1 Kings, the 20th chapter, and we sort of see this similar sort of, parabolic, metaphorical lesson learning saying, right, with during the time of King David, where the Lord sent, I believe it was Nathan, who came to David, and instead of directly just telling David that what he did was wicked, he sort of made David come to that realization via that story, right, about the rich man who had all this lamb and a flock, and this poor man had only one, and the rich man killed the poor man's lamb and took it, which even enraged David, right, to the point of that sort of made it easier to admit, right, your fault here, being that's an example representing your situation. Cool. So that's the end of 1 Kings, the 20th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rechak Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.